Okay, I've got 5:30, so we're gonna go ahead and call our work session to order, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Howard.
Very good, thank you so much, and I do want to thank the board for committing to this meeting just before the board meeting. There are a couple of items that I feel like need further explanation, and you'll notice one of the action items, we really don't even have a final recommendation, because we wanted your feedback on that. Mr. Nicholson and Mr. Summer are gonna talk about that, so again, I appreciate you rescheduling the work session for this 5:30, and then also just a reminder that we're gonna meet next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Hopefully we can keep that for just a couple of hours, but just to make sure that the full board is equipped to feel comfortable with the advanced ed visit, as well as some preliminary budget and personnel items that we really need to talk about before we get too far down the road. I was preparing, looking back a little bit, to prepare for SACs, and I have to tell you that it was alarming to me to look at the numbers. And when I was preparing for 2013-14 SACs visit, we were right at 7,300 kids, and when we were preparing last week, we're at 8,000. So in a very short time, we've grown almost 700 kids. If you think about that, that's a pretty big deal. So we are really in a growth pattern, which has lots of benefits, but there's challenges aligned to that as well. And I just saw Mr. Mahala walk up, so we'll welcome him when he gets here. The first item is just a reminder that we committed to adding some policies each month. So for January, you had policies A, B, and C, and hopefully you had enough time to look over those. There were no policies in section C, but probably the most important section that we will look at in terms of a board is in section B. And so there are several things in there that I want to make sure that we highlight. One, I won't read all of them because I know that you've already read them, and Amanda prepared you these notebooks, and each month we'll give you the upcoming policies for your review, and then when we come back, if there's any additions. BBFA references alternative school and a facility and so forth, so Amanda and I will work on a revision for that, if you would like. But I certainly want to make sure that you're aware that since our board members are, we have several new board members, we publish the agenda no later than 24 hours prior to the board meeting. So if you ever have any question, you feel free to call us at any time. That's BCPD. And now we're using Assembly. Welcome, good to see you. We're using Assembly and doing a better job of trying to make sure that all of the attachments are there before. And then the others that I feel like it's critical that we make sure our board members are aware of is public participation, and that's legislatively that's really encouraged, and we've never discouraged it. So I don't think there are any revisions on that. It's a pretty lengthy policy, but I thought you might want to look at that. And then the only other one that we should always reference is BH, which is the Code of Ethics. And if you haven't had a chance to read over the Code of Ethics, please do that. Dr. Cook did reference that pretty regularly as a part of our training, and so we definitely wanted that. And then conflict of interest, which is BHA. And that is just intended to protect board members. So those are the B policies that I feel like you need to make sure you've read through, and if you have any questions, let's make sure we bring those back around. What Amanda has given to us for the upcoming board meeting, for this month going forward, if you'll read through those, and we can speak of these next week if you'd like, but we're going to add D. So there's several policies in D as well as E. And when we get to on down the line with section I, instructional areas and student and personnel, those we're going to really dig in and take some time to go through those. So we've provided there for you those policies. Do you have any questions about anything from sections A and B? Anybody have any questions about any of those? Okay, I will bring the revised policy next month, and again, revised policy doesn't necessarily have to lay on the table, but it can. It's just a basically clean up. All right. The big item, as I mentioned, is leadership and performance, and it is E-rate season. So we did go ahead. I hope you don't mind, but instead of copying things twice, this was an item we were going to speak of. So if you will get your notebook and with your blessing, we're going to reference it today, and then I'll take it back up and give it to you next week so that you don't have to haul it back and forth, and we'll make sure we have it. But back under...
It's behind the teaching and learning tab.
Right behind the teaching and learning tab.
It's after, you'll see
Very
some
back,
power,
pretty much.
you'll see something in regard to technology, and you're looking for a document, excuse me, that looks like,
It's a PowerPoint projection.
it says JCSS phone upgrade.
So I'll turn it over to Todd. We are officially at 49% free and reduced lunch rate, which puts us below the 50% mark, which has multiple impacts, and that's a part of the conversation here as well. So I'll turn it over to you, gentlemen.
So part of this conversation comes from the fact that in the past, E-rate dollars, you were able to use those dollars for things like your phone system. That's no longer allowable. We inherited actually a system that was served us quite well for many years, but all of the phones are end of life. And so at this point, Mike and team can do no additional upgrades to the phones. When they go out, they go out. So what we've put together for you is 4 different scenarios. Again, in the past with E-rate, we would only have to pay 40% of it. It's not quite as bitter of a pill to have to swallow. I do want to give you some brief background though. We have talked with the Teacher Advisory Council, got feedback from them. We talked with our principals, got feedback from them, and talked to our assistant principals and got feedback. And the general consensus with our teachers is when they knew the estimated dollar point that we were talking about, they really wanted to not want phones. That was double negatives. They really wanted to find a solution where they didn't feel like they had to have phones in the classroom. But as we went through the conversation, it really became a safety issue. Some of our schools, if you're downstairs, if a child was having a seizure, you can't rely on your cell phone. So then we talked through, well, maybe we put handheld radios in everybody's hands. And we've gone through a lot of different variations, and we can certainly continue to explore them. But we wanted to let you peruse and become a little bit more familiar with 4 scenarios rather. And don't worry, because 2 of these, I'm going to go ahead and tell you we are not recommending, but we just want to make sure that you have an awareness. So if you'll skip to the page that says A, B, C, and D, it's about 3 or 4 slides in. The first 2 plans that we're putting in front of you are actually going with what we currently have, which is Cisco. And Cisco is very much a proprietary corporation, meaning that anytime they come up with any kind of upgrade, any kind of, I mean, they get their service fees, they get their upgrade fees, and it's served us well, but it's no longer the only option out there. So there are 2 options that involve Cisco. One of them is a full upgrade with Cisco, and that would be just taking all the phones that we currently have, replacing them, keeping everything the way it is, and that is it's a little under $800,000. So that's a pretty substantial investment. The second upgrade is that we could just upgrade using Cisco, using the current infrastructure, and just put phones in very specific locations, workrooms, administrative offices, make sure that we have phones placed periodically throughout a hallway so that if you needed to get to a phone, you could. And that spreads out the money over time, but we would still need to do all of the upgrades over time. So that one, I believe, was a little under $200,000, was it not?
And Tom, can I just interject
Absolutely.
just for a second?
Please do.
With Cisco, they've actually changed how they license their voice over IP. So you're having to pay a Flex license. So these prices are kind of spread out. They're a 5-year cost, but you can see for the full upgrade, you're looking at an upfront cost of almost $200,000, and then we're going to pay $97,000 for the next 5 years in licensing. The partial was about $117 upfront with a $41,000 a year, and that's really just not feasible. I just don't think that's the way to go. So what we did in technology was try to bring in some other vendors from outside to just give us some options. And now you can talk about Mitel that's
Absolutely, jump in anytime. So we were really trying to find options that didn't tie us into those annual fees, the upgrade fees, and at this point, we found another provider that we're pretty interested in and wanted to share with you. So we're gonna go to option C, which is full upgrade to Mitel phone system. I'm on that slide. This does have, it's a $418,000 upfront cost, but there's no annual fees for the next 5 years. What this essentially does too is this allows us to use some virtual servers, and definitely correct me if I misspeak, so that we don't have to rely nearly as much on the hardware infrastructure. It's still there, but right now with the Cisco, you have to have all the servers, you have to have all the
you have to have
hardware.
Cisco equipment.
Yes.
They want their call manager, they want all their equipment in here. What Mitel allows us, they have phones and stuff, but it's a software-based system. So we can use all our servers, our virtual server setup. it allows for a lot more redundancy and flexibility in what we're trying to do.
And this would be, in this scenario, option C, teachers would keep a phone in their classroom, they get a new phone, it's a new system, so there'll be some professional learning that goes along with it, but it would not reduce the number of phones that we have in any location. Of course, the con there is that it's the $418,000 all at once, and that becomes a cash flow and an Aaron kind of conversation, but.
And RFP, has to be an
Yeah,
RFP.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
So all these systems are, they're VoIPs?
Yes.
So in case of emergency, what's the redundancy?
I'm glad you asked that.
Well, what we have right now is no redundancy. If we lose power at Gordon Street, all the phones are down.
Right.
What we're proposing to do is put a main system in one side of the district, doesn't matter which one, and have a failover. They both run simultaneously, and they're always, so if you can't reach this one, it's automatically gonna, and that's all programmed in. What I do like about this is this MyTel system, and we've all, when the car wreck hit the telephone pole and knocked everything down, we had 3 schools that
Yes.
you couldn't call. What this allows us to do, as long as you can reach one of these things, I mean, the fiber can be cut to Gum Springs and West Jackson, can't get in, but as long as you can reach, I can go in the system and say, take Gum Springs number and route it to the cell phone of
Okay.
whoever. So it looks like the phones stay up all the time, but it's routing to
Okay.
somebody's cell phone, whether it's a principal or whoever.
Thank you.
And I'm glad you asked that, Mr. Hollett, because every one of these scenarios has that redundancy.
Yes.
And that was
Yes.
Mike's very first requirement for each one of them, so that we can avoid that, so thank you. So the other option is, if we didn't want to do that up front, there was option D, and option D would be $185,000 upfront. That would be that's essentially the one where we're just replacing the phones in critical locations.
Front office.
Front office, the same thing that we mentioned with the Cisco, you'd have one in, some common spaces along hallways.
Teacher workrooms, the whole, yeah.
Exactly.
But about less than half of what you're
Yes,
probably gonna get with the
Yes.
phone.
yes, and I asked Mike to look into it to say, well, what if we did that for a year, saw how it went, and then we came back around and reinstalled the rest of the phones, and it actually is more expensive.
To do it
Than doing it
They
all
came back,
once.
to come back the second year to do classrooms and all that with the number, I think it was around 250 or 260,000. And I just didn't really pursue that any further.
So those 4 options, like I said, that we received feedback, and the teachers and the assistant principals felt pretty strongly that it was more of a safety issue. One of the things that was brought up that I thought was a great point was, well, we can use the call buttons, but now the call buttons are really used just for emergencies, and so all of a sudden you're gonna be flooding the front office again with, oh, by the way, somebody spilled something in the bathroom, kind of, and they've built around a culture of the call button means somebody come down here right now, we've got an emergency. And it's not that we couldn't redefine how we communicate, but we wanted to give you 4 options to ask questions, to explore. Mike did a wonderful job, I think, of laying the pros and cons out. And if money was not an issue, my recommendation would be that we go with C, keep the phones where they are, and we don't have to worry about safety, we don't have to worry about anybody trying to come up with a plan B or C or D in terms of how we get in touch with each other. If you've ever walked into some of our schools with your own cell phone, you can't get a signal. We've looked in, what is it, what if we put everybody on the network, well, then everybody's got, we've looked at a whole lot of options, and we were trying to find an option that didn't require keeping phones, because we thought, well, maybe there's something better out there. But in terms of price and connectivity, this is where we landed, but we were happy to explore other options or answer any questions you might have, if I left anything out.
No, but that about covers it.
Either way, the timing is critical, because March 1st is kind of the time frame that we're looking for to utilize some of the E-rate funds. Not as many as we used to could, but some, for server upgrades, correct?
Yeah, that's
To
the
align with
second
That
part
is
of our
the
conversation.
second part.
But it's impacted by the first decision,
Yes,
correct?
yes,
So-
yes.
But this phone stuff, whatever decision we do go, we will have to put an RFP out there, and that'll have to be a pretty quick, but it's one of those, something we'd need to do this summer, whether it's full blown, and this is the price of them doing all the work. I mean, it is turnkey, we're there to help, but our infrastructure, the Cat 5 cabling, Cat 6 cabling is all in place. And the second part, we need to upgrade, we'll talk about that, but.
Do you know of any other districts that are using my telephone?
Rockdale County's using it. I know,
It's incorporated.
CDC, a lot of banks, hospitals down in Atlanta, I mean, a lot of big companies and that have multiple locations, and that's what I was trying to do, is to treat this like almost like a business where you've got different campuses around there. I want that connectivity, because Cisco's gonna charge you for every little nickel and dime. Hope that's not on.
It's on.
But you're paying for the word Cisco, and I just felt like we can get more bang for our buck. All of these systems allow us to, you can route your voicemail to your email and send a little WAV file so you can get emailed voice. You don't have to be at your desk to get a voicemail. So, we've got some old equipment, 15 years old, that it's just end of life. So, it's, we tried everything we could do with option C. Hey, can we pay half this year and the other half? And it's that's just how they, now, we'll do an RFP, whichever way we wanna go, and maybe we can have a little flexibility, I don't know, but I'd have to say now it's all up front.
I want to second Todd's comment about a kudos and sort of a shout out to our school leaders and our teachers. They were very thoughtful. They didn't, they really tried hard to think of how we could do this without, but the more they talked through it, the more they felt like, intercoms are very disruptive. We've finally gotten away from an intercom call for so-and-so to check out. Is that is, we've tried to reduce the amount of interruptions, and the phones are certainly a safety piece, but.
Yeah, the number of times, we had the kindergarten end, it's a lot easier for me to call a parent and still stay in my classroom and attend to an issue right there and not have to go from, as I mentioned, medical concerns to, they're just, and they really did not, they did not want to say, I think we need funds,
So our infrastructure, we have enough, our servers, everything we have is compatible, and we'll.
Yes.
That's a great segue too.
Mitel is, their VMware, and that's what we run all our stuff on. I have in my budget yearly to buy new servers so we can keep replenishing the older. But yes, it's very compatible and easy to be redundant.
Which, we need to make a decision on this tonight, correct? Really,
So let me tie us into the next portion, and so the answer to that is yes.
Yes.
Because the next portion is, there's another document right behind that one, it's a spreadsheet, and it's really small. But this is where Mike has gone through and has looked at, essentially, the final round of E-rate dollars. This is the last in our 5-year cycle for this one, right?
Yes, sir. With E-rate, you have category 1, which is your WAN and internet fee. Category 2, the federal government, based on your free and reduced lunch, they're gonna give you a dollar amount per student, which may be, I think this past year it was $154 per student. My predecessor, next year is year 5, and they do it every 5 years. They've already come out and said they're gonna do it, but based on the numbers, we've got X amount of dollars sitting out there in a pot that Jackson County schools can use based on our numbers. And what we've tried to do is we're trying to streamline the network. We've got a mixed bag of equipment out there, whether they're just these old 100 meg switches. We're trying to replace them with a new, which think of, a 1 gig switch is 1,000 meg. It's almost twice as fast, 3 times as fast. So what Rusty and the network team and all did was kind of go through the schools. We've consolidated a lot of stuff. And we got to a number where, okay, where can we be to get rid of all the old 3750s and let's get streamlined. And that's where we came up with these numbers. And what E-rate requires is you put an RFP out there. We did, and we got about 5 vendors that responded. We went through, scored it, and CDW was the winner based on history and all that. Long story short, the total project to get that is about a $206,000 item, but Jackson County, what we're asking for is our portion, 30% of about 65,070, and we can do the rest of the schools as needed. And that'll get us apples to apples throughout the district instead of a hodgepodge of different speeds.
So the total right now is $64,888.5 that would be out of pocket for Jackson County, but the E-rate funds that they would be contributing is $141,756. So what that does to put, so Mike told you all the technology. Basically what this does is this increases the speeds, and it increases the speed where we don't have the speed at the rate that we need it, and then it accommodates more users. If that's correct?
Pretty much with our wireless and our capacity, yes.
So what they've been trying to do is, talking about redundancy again, is we have seen lately, they've been monitoring the usage, and as you can imagine, there's more usage on the west side because there's more folks on the west side. And the way it's configured right now, what they're trying to do is send some of the schools that are currently on the west side configuration and send them over to the east side, make sure that we have all the same switches, and so that at that point, we also have a little bit more flexibility when something does go out, that we can, when we put everybody on one side, you have dial-up basically. So that's part of what we're trying to address with this as well. But the reason it's related is because depending on how we go, if we went with Cisco, then we definitely need all these hardwire, I mean, we need the tangible switches, and there's.
Well, really, if we went with C, yes, but if it's option D, we're only gonna do workrooms, then I really don't need, I can consolidate down, so.
So we're essentially asking for the approval to spend up to this, I think we put 65.
We put up to 70.
Up
Yeah.
to
It should
70
be
for
less
E-rate.
than
No, we wouldn't go over that.
That's a general fund expenditure, we're
Yeah.
trying to preserve SPOS a little bit.
Yeah. But depending on how, the recommendation that you make for the phones then determines how many.
And from a layman's term, which would be April, in hearing conversations and listening and learning, it's, if you think about the numbers of kids we have walking around with a phone and a watch and a laptop, they're pulling 3 times what they used to pull in terms of, even if they're, even if they're not connected all the time, they're still automatically connecting. So it's, the need is increasing and just going to increase, so. If I had an option, and I think we recognize that this is not an expenditure that we would like to stomach, but the wisest thing is to go with option C and go ahead and do it the right way and provide for classrooms. But it's really up to you all, so.
That sounds
Welcome
like it's the
any
best
feedback.
plan too. Let's just go ahead and take care of it and done with it.
Can I ask you, so this last, manufacturer name is Cisco, so are these C9300, these are servers?
I'm sorry, where are you at?
He's on the.
Well, the way the federal government, and you can put this on camera, the way the federal government requires you to do is I can't just say I need a 3850 switch.
Yes.
I've got to break every single line item. You'll see there's a line item for the power cable that should be
Yes.
coming with it.
Yes.
So those are all components, whether they're the 10 gig GPIC. What I wanted was a switch that I could configure and put in a rack, and it has everything I need, whether it's the GPIC, the whole 9 yards. So those line items all kind of add up if you count the
Yes.
number of switches, and then a power cord's 14, and
Okay.
so hope that
Yes.
answered.
So we can come back to that one if you wanna think about it. I think we have the board meeting this evening. We do have the action item for the approval, or requesting approval of the network switches to be funded with E-rate funds and general funds. That would be up to 70, but that's what Todd's referencing, a little over 64. And then whichever voice over solution you are, have the greatest sense of peace about, either probably C or D. I think what I hear Cisco is the least, A and B, or the Cisco solutions are not the last solutions long term.
The most expensive for sure.
Right, and greatest
But I
fee
don't
structure.
think we're sacrificing any kind of quality either in this situation. I think we're just thinking about a solution that's different than what we've done in the past.
Well, it's cheaper, it's all new, and once, we don't have another expenditure for 5 years. And then it's licensing after that, and that could be anything,
So let's go through the rest of the agenda and give the board time to think about it. Let's get the financial updates and get a little bit more information, and then you can make an informed decision. And if you're not ready to make a decision, we can go through we're gonna have to put an RFP, but we need to know what we're gonna put out. So
Right.
that's the key there. All right, so Dr. Blankenship, you've been very busy this season.
Yes,
We have
already.
Quite a list of folks here for you to consider, but I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So, we have a couple of personnel lists for you. The first is just a list of our, new hires, resignations, transfers, and retirements. You'll see we have a couple of bus drivers on there. That's always a good thing. Excuse me, and we've, filled the last of our paraprofessional positions, that we had vacant. We, have an adaptive special ed teacher. That position has been open, and we're filling it through the remainder of this school year. With this person, it'll be posted again, and certainly, they have the option to apply for that. But we wanted to make sure that we had a certified teacher in that position for the remainder of the year, and so you'll have that recommendation for consideration. And then you see we have a few retirements that have come in since our last meeting there for your consideration. The second list is the list of our administrative recommendations for next school year. And so you have all of your leadership staff listed here. And then next month, we'll be bringing you the teacher certified recommendations for your consideration. So, any questions about either of those? And then the other piece is that, and just, I guess one more thing I would say in conjunction with the personnel list is that we have been attending some recruitment fairs and have had some great interactions with potential candidates, and so our principals are already, beginning to, we have a number of jobs posted, and they're beginning to interview for those positions. So we've really gotten a good head start on the hiring for next year. And we've also been talking with our new teachers. We had a great induction meeting today with our induction leads and some of our first year teachers who gave us some great feedback on how things have gone this year and what we can do to support those teachers for next year. And so that's a really important piece for retention and the development of those new teachers. So we will continue to work to build that program. And then we had our meetings, ESS came today and did 2 orientation sessions with our current subs, and that all went very smoothly, as well as did a training with our school-based staff that will be interacting with the subsystem. So all of those pieces went very smoothly, and I think everybody left with smiles on their faces, so that's a good thing too. We have the attendance and enrollment numbers for you for this month. You can see we're staying steady with our enrollment and our attendance. North Jackson had the highest attendance at 97.03%. And that's a growing school. They are almost at 400.
Yeah, and didn't we talk about, Dr. Blankenship, that proportionally, that's actually the fastest growing school?
It is the fastest growing school we have right now,
Okay.
proportionally speaking.
Right, right. I mean, but to have gained 50 kids in a year at a small school like that is pretty substantial.
Over 10%.
And that area is growing. We continue to see planning and zoning to allow for some developments up in that area, see the Pendergrass. And I have to say a very special thank you to them. They are keeping us updated pretty regularly, and we are grateful for that. They're helping us. We can't stay ahead too much, but they're helping us stay ahead as much as we can. So they are. Yes, it is. It's very, very good. All right, Dr. B, thank you. And so at our retreat time, our mini retreat next week, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the thank you to Anna and Dr. Blankenship, who we've met with all of our school leaders now and gone over points that they've earned based on our allocations and FTE. And they've done a great job with that, thanks to Martha back there, in terms of scheduling. But we're going to see, just to give you a lead on some going to see some need for increased positions next year, just purely because of
We
enrollment. Pretty
increased,
substantial.
right at 200 FTE projected year over year, so that's substantial.
And not likely to slow down anytime soon, based on what we're seeing, so prepare ourselves, right? Hold on. All right. Ms. Dodge, share with us the good news that you have here. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So if you wanna look at the fund balance comparison, you'll see that right now we're sitting at a little over $22 million. Of course, this is a time when
It's the highest.
yeah, when it's the highest, because we've collected the majority of our taxes, and so we'll see us start eating into that fund balance throughout the rest of the fiscal year, for operations. But even if we happen to average $2 million a month above and beyond the funding that we get, we're still gonna be sitting at over 12 million to end the year in fund balance, so. It's good, because we need it.
I was gonna say.
Because between phone systems and devices and people and, yeah. I'm gonna put a sign on my door that says, no, you cannot have any money. No more. But no, it's a good thing, and then if you wanna look at the financial summary, you'll see that for expenditures, we're right where we need to be at this point in the year at 58%. Of the year completed, and we're right at 58% for our expenditures, so everything's so far pretty much in line where it should be.
Last but not least.
It's SPOS,
Yeah.
again, close to $700,000, and increase over all measures over last year, over last month, and over the average, and our monthly average continues to increase. Each time we get one of these big deposits, so, we were excited when we got over 600,000, and now I'm shooting for 625, and it looks like we'll get there within the next month or two, so it's looking good.
That's great.
We're still functioning in a conservative mode though, because like you said,
And you will,
still lots to do.
yeah, and in case there's a question about what the SPOS balance is overall, keep in mind that we've not been reimbursed from the state on West Middle for our state funds. So that's part of that balance that will be coming back to us. So by the time we get done with grading and paying for grading, it will be the 13 million that we had set aside.
Okay, good.
Kind of cost that.
No.
Right.
No.
All right, very good. Under SPOS, there are a couple of items that I think we probably need to speak to, and that's, Mr. Nicholson had mentioned to us earlier about we were ready for our next round of competitive grants for our teachers to continue the effort for a one-to-one initiative for Chromebooks. We're getting closer and closer, and the board has been graciously supportive in keeping that effort. One of the things that we've talked about, and I realize we're on camera here and probably shouldn't say this, but the quicker we can get to a one-to-one effort, the less necessary these become. And as we all know, we don't want to censor children's lives, that's not our goal at all. But at the same time, if they have a Chromebook and they can function and they have what they need, they don't need all the other items. And that helps us on the BYOT effort, so.
We
You
have
wanna
more
speak a little-
control over Chromebooks
You
for
do.
educational purposes, and that's why we've allowed those, but, we're not asking for additional money in this case, so otherwise I feel like I'm just asking for lots of money. This was just, originally, I think we had this in the cash flow in May, but it looks like it is such that we could purchase them a little bit earlier. We've already gone ahead and opened up this round of competitive grants, and we just would like for your blessing to go ahead and proceed next month with purchasing them, so that we can get them into the teacher's hands, but full transparency, it helps us with assessment too.
Sure.
So that we're right at that tipping point where last year we still had to move some devices around, and people become very sensitive, and devices, even when you take, I remember Rusty a couple years ago, he sent off a set of devices, and so nicely put together, and they came back and all the cables were in a box, and it just, so it would eliminate that, it would allow the testing process to be that much easier, but more importantly, it does get those devices in the students' hands, and then it can provide that training, and the teachers, what I like about that is they can go into the summer knowing that they can plan for next year. They physically already have their Chromebooks in front of them, so we're just asking for your blessing to move that from May to March. And that's $250,000 for another 1,000 Chromebooks, and we're getting really close. We'll talk about that next week about how close we are, but we're getting very close to that one-on-one. Some of our schools are already there.
Till the enrollment starts outpacing,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna have to reevaluate.
So we'll still have to share some Chromebooks or devices for testing.
Testing, I don't know that we'll have to.
No,
I don't think we'll have to. I think 1,000 more. Now, you know, it depends on who gets them and where that
Yeah.
shakes out, but the odds are substantially in our favor that wouldn't be the case.
Oh, okay, good.
It would certainly significantly minimize it to where maybe it's only Gum Springs. Last year, see, West Middle is in a great place. A couple of years ago, we had to cart them back and forth between the two schools, but West Middle's in a 1-to-1 at this point. So.
Yeah.
What Chromebooks do you guys use?
The HP Chromebook.
And they're ruggedized, commercialized.
Well, and
With a 4-year warranty.
we get them with the warranty and all that stuff. I mean, even for the accidental damage.
Yes.
You can go to Best Buy and buy one cheaper, but once it's done, it's done.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep.
Speaking of which, I think it's worthy of mentioning, Troy and Martha are back there, and Todd. They served diligently on the alternative assessment at the state level, and so Jackson County was invited to present at Gale. And so kudos to them. There were 4 districts that were called the Fab Four at the Gale Winter Gale, and so Jackson County was one of them. And I was very, very proud of the progress that's been made, and the fact that the state has recognized that we are completely focused on student growth and how we can personalize the learning experience for kids and meet them where they are, instead of a one-size-fits-all standardized approach to education. And so those gentlemen did a great job leading that work, and we're still waiting to hear from the federal
Yes.
government on whether or not that's going to be accepted, but it's being seriously considered, and I think the state's proud of the work that's happened here, so great work there. All right, Mr. Gilbert and team.
Well, good evening. We'll start out with some surplus school buses. And I'll defer to Mr. Farmer here to talk about that.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. We have surplus for your proposal and approval tonight, 10 school buses. This will get all 96 model buses off the road. We're very excited about that, and this is beginning to a great start of achieving through your foresight and vision on allowing us to purchase new buses. And this is a step forward, so we are very excited, and thank you for all that you've done as a board, and also our superintendent.
I get kind of excited because we're not signing a whole bunch of Seymour bills anymore. I miss about Seymour towing.
I bet they're missing us.
Yeah, I'm sure they're missing us.
Our towing bill has gone down significantly.
That's good.
We're very excited about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you've been by the office, you've probably seen a lot of yellow buses around, so we are grateful. We always try and give you an update on our construction projects, and we'll do that tonight. Mr. Patton will share a little bit about West Middle. A lot happened in there last week.
Yeah, we had a good week last week. We're really on track. We're gonna finish before we thought we would. The breaks have really helped us out. And, most of the cabinets are finished now. We finished up 8th grade last week, and it's looking at spring break probably being done inside, and we'll still have some stuff outside, but it's moving along very good. Everybody's
Big
pretty
unveiling
excited.
Thursday.
It is Thursday night. Hopefully we'll have a big crowd from the community. So, but it looks good. Everybody's enjoying it.
It's wonderful.
You get a chance to go by and you wanna just see one thing, if you got that much time, go to the cafeteria. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it looks much better.
Really, really nice.
Those windows bring so much light in, it makes it feel so much bigger. Even though that's not a huge additional space, the windows make a huge difference.
Feels good, and then all the additional countertops surrounding the columns are just places where kids they're really additional learning environments, if you will, so.
It really has almost a collegiate feel,
Mhm.
to it.
It really does. And then on the high school project, where,
Pictures
yeah, that's right, I
under
forget that.
your tab.
In your book, under facilities, you'll find a number of additions that show the renderings, and then they show, I think, site plans, floor plans. And they're very small, unfortunately. When you come next week, you'll have links to those, and you can pull them up on a screen and see them a lot better than you can on paper like this. We're continuing to meet with our team every Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. That's the design and the pricing team and scheduling. And then we meet on Mondays at 10 o'clock with the construction team. We're permitted now. Outlet control structures for the storm drainage system have arrived. And should be a lot happening if it won't rain too much.
Just till March 3rd, it's right tomorrow.
Yeah.
I rode the site this morning and it's a little bit muddy out there, so we'll see what the next days bring us. But good project. We got some pretty good sized bid packages going out in the next, one next month and one the following month. So a lot going on.
I'm sure you will speak to this later, but I just want to thank Josh and Ted for some very creative thinking, and they've spent a good bit of time meeting with the athletic program folks to get some input. But this multi-purpose facility, instead of having what we would normally think of just an auxiliary gym, a competitive gym, we're gonna have the competitive gym ideally. Then you've got a multi-purpose facility that will accommodate more than just, it's.
Really any sport you wanna
Any
play.
Because it's gonna become evolutionary. I mean, in the next, decade or two, generation's gonna bring indoor soccer or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
There's gonna be all
It's a
kinds of.
great practice facility for
It is.
anybody.
It has 2 full-size courts inside of it. You can see it to the far right on the design. And they can speak to it a little bit more next week, but trying really hard to be thoughtful about not just today, but the future, and then involving our present leaders at that school. So appreciate that work. So, I believe because we kind of condensed, that's really all the work session items. We've got about 10 or 15 minutes, just enough time for a restroom break if you need one before the actual board meeting, but that's all the work session items that we have. We do want to come back around to your thoughts. We're not taking action during the work session, but if we're going to take action at the meeting, you may want to talk outside of this setting and otherwise the voiceover option, which option is really, if you want to talk to the other board members and then maybe make a recommendation to us, and we can honor that at the
Okay.
actual.
Yeah.
All right.
A couple of 3 days. I'm trying to think of